Okay, welcome. In this video, I'm going to go over assignment 8. So let's get started. So the first thing I like to do when I go over an assignment is I like to look at the sample output. So let's take a look at the sample output. So in this program, we're going to manage an array of objects. So we're going to manage you're going to pick your object. In my case, I have a vegetable object. So please do not use vegetable, use something else. You should use the same class that you used in a previous assignment because in that you already created your default constructor, your explicit value constructor, your accessor and mutator functions, and you're just going to be adding a few extra features to that class now. And then we're going to be managing a list of objects. So in order to manage the list of objects, we're going to have some menu options so that we can test the things that we're managing. So I have an input file. Let me just show you my input file here. In my input file, I have 5 objects. So I don't know if you guys can see this, so I'll zoom in here. So I have 5 objects in my input file. Uh, each one has an ID, a name, a color, a cost, and a price. So I put 5 objects in my input file. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the objects from my input file. So up here in my sample output, I'm just giving myself feedback to to know that I have read the data from the file and the count is 5. So that's not required. You don't have to print that onto the screen, but obviously as you're developing your program, you want to print information onto your screen. Then I have some selections here. So my first option is I'm going to add a veggie to the list. My second option is to display my veggie list. My third option is to compare the selling price of 2 veggies. My fourth option is to calculate the difference in the price of 2 veggies. My fifth option is to calculate, which I spelled wrong, but that's okay, calculate the profit on a veggie purchase. So in this assignment, you're going to be using your class and these features right here will be added as member functions and friend functions, and then you're going to have to use some programmer defined functions. So we're going to go over all of this. I just wanted to give an overview of the uh, sample output, which is posted with the assignment. So another thing I want to point out is we're not going to delete any veggies from our list in this assignment. Please submit the assignment as is, and then if you want to add extra features, I certainly am happy to help you. After you've submitted the assignment as requested, you can add additional features. So I don't want you to add extra items delete items from your list. I also don't want you to have your list sorted. So you will see here when we display the list, these were the 5 that were from the file, and then this is the 6th item, and the IDs are nothing is in any kind of order. It just gets added to the end of the list. So you're not deleting from the list and you're not sorting the list. So please don't add that feature to this. Just submit it as is, and then if you want to sort later, of course, you can. But after you learn about vectors, there's a much easier way to sort using a vector than to try to sort your own arrays. All right, so let's go here. So the user is going to be able to make a selection, a 1 to add a item object to the list, a 2 to display the entire list, a 3 to compare the selling price of 2 veggies. So this is going to be a friend function operator overload. You get to choose what you want to overload for your friend function here. I'm going to show you what I've done, but you can use that as a guide. And this is going to be calculate the difference in price. So this is overloading the subtraction operator. You're either going to overload the addition or the subtraction operator. So be sure that you review how to do friend functions. So these 2 will be done with friend functions. And then calculating the profit on a veggie purchase, that is going to be an additional member function. I will go over all of that in just a moment. I'm just going over this sample output right now. So as you have the user enter the information, you ask line by line for the information. So the name, the color, the user will enter the ID. You do not have to check to see if the ID already exists. Just assume that the user will enter an integer for the ID and the user will enter a unique number for the ID. If you want to add that feature, you can, but I'm not going to be testing for it, and nor is it a requirement for this assignment. So focus on the requirements for this assignment. Okay, so then if you select 2, it will display. So I'm choosing only to display the cost. The price. I'm not displaying the cost. So like carrots have my cost is 30 cents, but the price is 75 cents. So I'm only displaying the price. Each one of you has your own unique object. So your unique object will have unique information. Notice when I display the list, it is not sorted in any way. The new lima beans that I just added got added to the end of the list. Now I am adding another veggie. Again, when I display it, that other veggie got added to the end of the list. So that's just to show you that. Okay. If you make a not valid selection, it should continue. The program should not end for an invalid selection, so it should continue. I'm just saying it's not a valid choice. Here, comparing, so this is where it's going to get complicated because in order to compare the selling price of 2 vegetables, you're going to have to search and find those vegetables. That's why each one needs to have a unique ID. So to search and find them, I'm displaying them. Then I'm having the user enter the ID, and then I'm going through and finding that one. Then to get the second one, I am displaying them, and I have the user enter an ID. If the user enters an incorrect ID, I'm just going to choose to select the first vegetable in the list. So if the user enters an ID that is not in the list, this one is going to be selected. You can, because I just want to test my features and I want to keep going with my program and I don't want to start all over and search again. Anytime that a vegetable is not found, if the user enters an ID, again, assume the user will enter an integer. If the user enters an ID that is not found, I'm just going to return the first one on my list. That way I'm still going to compare. I'm going to compare my 2 different carrot prices. Here is one where they pick the right one. They select 3. They find Brussels sprouts. Then they find beets. So now I did find both of those and I compare the price of those 2. Then I have calculate the difference in price. This is also going to require searching for 2 vegetables. So we have 333 and 444, and I calculate the difference in their prices. And then I show you again that if the user, the difference here. So the difference if they selected 333 first, which is $1.60, followed by beets, the difference will be 70 cents. If they select the lower price one first, followed by the higher price one, the difference is going to be negative 70 cents. So you don't have to check to make sure that that's going to be positive or negative. This is just an exercise. Keep in mind as you keep working on this, this is one of the longer assignments that we have. You're going to come up with a lot of different ideas and things that you want to fix but it's more important that you focus on understanding what's happening than dealing with little issues that might arise. All right, so now I have my next one, calculating the profit. So the reason why these 2 are friend functions is because these 2 options are going to compare 2 different objects. When you calculate the profit, this is going to be a member function because I'm only going to be dealing with one member function. So if I'm only dealing with one member function, then I can calculate the profit on that object. One object of my class, then I can use a member function because I'm only dealing with one object. If you're dealing with 2 objects, you want to use friend functions because friend functions have access to the private member variables, but they can deal with more than one object. Okay, so again, if they enter an ID where it was not found, then I'm just going to return the first one in the list. All right, so take a look at this sample output. I gave you a lot of information on this sample output so you can follow along. Of course, your sample output doesn't need to match mine exactly, because obviously it won't because you're not doing vegetables, and your menu options might be a little bit different. Your first two should be the same. Add an object to your list and display your list. But then what you're comparing is going to be up to you. You're going to use a relational operator, less than equal or less than or equal to, or equals or greater than or equal to. You're going to pick that. When you're calculating, you're going to either add two together or subtract. And this right here, member function, is going to be something that's maybe profit doesn't relate to your type of class and your object. So you're going to do something that will affect one object in your class. So that will be an additional member function. So now let's take a look at the instructions again. All right, so this is you're going to have 6 menu options like I just showed you. The first one will be to add an object to the list. The second one will be to display the entire list. The third one will be a friend function to overload a relational operator. The fourth one will be a friend function operator overload of addition or subtraction. And the fifth one will be a member function implementation feature and 0 to quit. So I have provided you with extensive code here. I believe that this is my code that I provided you with. And in the next video, I'm going to give you some tips on where to go with this because this is a lot of code that I've given you here. So please watch the next video as we get started with the implementation. But before we get started with the implementation, I want to continue to go through the assignment instructions. Okay, you're going to, in assignment 5, I believe, or a previous assignment, you had a class implementation. Your class implementation included a default constructor and an explicit value constructor and 5 private member variables, and it also included accessors and mutators for all of your private member variables. So that part will already be done. You just take that class and continue on and add the features. You will be adding 2 friend functions and 2 member functions. So you'll be adding 2 friend functions, a member function for a feature, and a member function for display, to display one object. So I need to fix this because I need to add that you need to, and this will be fixed, but in addition to a class member function that does a feature, you need a class member function that will display. So I will display the list is displaying the entire array of objects. The member function will just display one object. So the display list function will call the display function from the display member function. I will add that after. I'm not going to start the video over. Okay, you're not using dynamic arrays. You're going to use a static array size 50. You need to have a input file with at least 5 objects that will start at index 0. You do not need to sort it. Please do not sort it. Assume when you add an item that the user will enter the data in the correct order from the prompts you're going to provide, that the user will enter the data in the correct order. When you declare your static array to be size 50, it's going to call the default constructor 50 times because you're allocating memory for 50 objects, so it's creating 50 objects. So if you have a cout statement in your default constructor, that's going to run 50 times. You're not going to keep the default. You're not going to care about that because you're going to have a count that's going to keep track of how many have been put into your array. So in the beginning, you have in the beginning you put 5 in there, your count will be 5 once you connect to the file. Before you connect to the file, you have 0. So your count will be 0. So in the next video, before we start implementation, I will draw some pictures of of what of the list and how it's going to look for the concept and the idea. Okay, so some other suggested functions are, and these are all provided in the assignment 8 template that I gave you, a void function that will connect and load the data from the file, a display function to display the menu options, a function to process the menu choices, a function to display the list of objects, a function to add an object to the list, a function to display the list and get and return an ID, because you need to display the list and then the user is going to select which one they want, and you're going to return the ID, and then a function that's going to go through and search that ID to see if it matches any ID in the list. And in my program, I chose to return the first object if the ID is not found. All right, so you're going to need these additional functions, your two friend functions and your two member functions. One is a feature and the other is display, which I will add this. Your code should be in the following order. So you're going to separate the declaration. So down here, your code should have the header comment, the preprocessor directives, your class declaration, which if you were separating the compilation, this would be what's in your H file, only the prototypes. Do not put your implementation of your member functions in the declaration. Below the declaration, you do the implementation of your member functions. This would be placed in a .cpp file if we were separating the class into .h and .cpp. Then you will have your non-member prototypes, your main function, and below your main function, you will have your non-member function and friend function implementation in any order. Because you have prototypes and because your friend functions are listed as prototypes in your class declaration, you don't need to worry about the order in which you put those. This is the order that your code should be in. And the file that I provided for you that is called Sorgente assign8.txt has that order, so we can take a look at it. If you take a look at this, we're going to go through this in detail in the next few videos, but just to go through it, here is my header comment. Here is my preprocessor directives, my using clause for the standard namespace. Here is my class declaration. If you take a look at my class declaration, there are no function implementations. This is simply just the prototypes. You've already done this. Hopefully, you've done your default constructor, your explicit value constructor, your accessor and mutator functions. These are public. What is private will be your member variables. I like to put the member variables at the bottom with the keyword private, just to remember that these are private and everything else in my class is declared as public. Then my member functions. So these are all going to be new to this assignment. I have a calculate profit function, a display function. You're going to need a display function. This will be whatever you're choosing to do. Then I have my two friend function. I'm overloading the subtraction operator and I'm overloading the less than operator. You can overload as indicated in the instructions. You can overload the addition or subtraction operator, and you can overload any relational operator that relates to your class. I suggest making it as simple as possible. The purpose of this assignment is not to make things complicated. It's to understand class design and development and manage an array of objects. So keep that in mind as you're working on it, because the more complicated you make it, the more you're going to be focused on the complication of your feature and less on the basic stuff we're learning in this assignment, which are going to be on your final exam. Possibly. All right, let's go back here to our, all right. So this is my class declaration. You will see it's separated. Then I have my member function implementation. Your member function implementation should include the scope resolution operator. This is my default constructor. My default constructor is empty. I'm making my default vegetable empty. We're not even going to use the explicit value constructor, but to be complete and to keep our class, you already put it in there, so just leave it in there. My accessor and mutator functions, my calculate profit function, and my display function. Now you will notice that in my declaration, I have declared my two friend functions, but the implementation, the actual definitions of where I implement these functions is not in my class. They are not class member functions. The implementation of those go below main with all of my other non-member functions. They are listed here as friend functions so they can access the private member variables. Okay, below that, so now these are all of my class member functions. If I was doing this with separate compilation, these class member functions would all be in a separate file called vegetable.cpp, and the declaration here would be in a separate file called vegetable.h. We're not doing separate compilation on this assignment just because it's a lot, but it's a lot to grade and manage for me, but for you guys, just to understand more about it, you can kind of get the idea. If you separate it in your source code file here, that's how it would be separated. The declaration would be in the .h file. The implementation part would be in the .cpp file, and then everything from here down would all be in the other .cpp or driver file. These are the programmer defined functions. These are the prototypes. There's one to load the vegetables from the file, to run the menu, to process the selection, to display the list. So the displaying in the class member function just displays one object. If you have a list of objects, then you have an array. So this is going to display the entire list. It will call that function. A function to add a veggie, a function to compare the cost, a function to select a veggie, a function to find which vegetable has been selected, and a function to make a purchase or basically calculate the profit of a purchase. Now, if obviously you probably won't have this function, but I gave it to you. If you decide to have any additional helper functions that are not suggested, they need to be implemented the same way that all of the functions are implemented, with a prototype here with comments, and the main function is here, and then all your function definitions go here below main. So we're going to break this up piece by piece in the next couple of videos. So stay with me. And right now, this is just overview, just to get you started, start thinking about your class and what you're going to implement. And in the next video, I will break it down for you and we will start programming step by step. So just to remind you, your default constructor, your declaration, which goes at the top, will have a default constructor prototype, explicit value prototype, accessor and mutator prototypes, a display function prototype, your additional member function prototype, and two friend function prototypes. Your implementation will include the scope resolution operator, which is the double colon, your default constructor implementation, which is a block of code, an explicit value constructor. These are all function definitions. Your accessor and mutator function definitions, your display function definition, and your additional member function implementation. Then you will have your non-member function prototypes, your main function, and your non-member function implementation, and your friend function implementation. So all of this right here would be in one file. Oops. All of this right here would be in the vegetable.cpp file if we were doing separate compilation, and all of this would be in the vegetable.h file if we separated our program into separate files. So now, okay, please, if you need help, ask me. Please do not use AI to assist with this assignment. It's going to make the assignment very different than my expectations. I'm very happy to help you, and I'm creating these videos to help you to work on this assignment step by step by step. So please keep that in mind. You will need to submit your own input file. So my input file is here, but my input file includes vegetable information. So you're going to have to create your own input file. Your source code file will have everything, your class declaration, your implementation, your main, and your non-member functions, and of course, a screenshot. All right, so in the next video, we will get started on implementation.